Hello and welcome to Plus One to Gaming. I'm Chris,
And I'm Eric.
Really?
and today we are going to talk about D&D downtime activities and ideas. So, downtime in D&D is one of those parts of the game where there's open space, and it could be in between adventure, between campaigns, but it could also be just like in the times in between stories or sessions. What are your characters doing? Um, I think we're playing a game where there's is and currently a lot of downtime. And I think this is a really appropriate time for this conversation to really identify like what can you do in downtime, how to think about downtime activities, and then just like working with your DM and fellow party members to try and make the most out of downtime. So Eric, you wrote a really great article, really diving into this. So just wanted to pass it over to you to kind of get your thoughts on, like what you can do with downtime and what some effective ways to kind of use it to level up your game.
Yeah. So there is, first of all, I think there's like a major question you need to ask as a DM and as a player is do I need to play out this downtime activity?
Mm.
Because like you said, there's a ton of stuff you can do. You can train, you can study, you can work, you can sell and buy items. And I think like our philosophy a lot of times is like if it doesn't add to the story or if it doesn't add to the character, I don't really want to use table time to do it. Like I can just tell Billy, hey, we sold this thing and I bought some potions. I'm like, okay. If I want to maybe make a relationship with the shop owner, or if there's some sort of like character growth I can see happening in purchasing and selling those items, maybe we'll play it out. But like, I feel like a good amount of stuff you just do off screen and let the DM know, especially the transactional stuff. I don't know. I don't want to have like a 6-minute scene of like, oh, what do you got back there? Oh, okay. Can I get like just shopping?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like I don't want to waste everybody's time doing that kind of stuff. So that's, I think, like the first question you need to ask yourself, like, is this going to add to the characters or to the story in
That's
any
a
way?
really, I think that as a first check is really powerful because it's just about your intention, and being respectful of everyone's time. Like, is this worth
Yeah.
table time? Is a really good like sieve to
Yeah.
filter any choice of like what that you want to present to the table.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily need to be on downtime. I think that is something you got to ask yourself a lot. Like, I'm not, you know, I think a lot of times, and I know Billy, we did this in our last kind of interlude, which we could potentially count as like downtime. Um, you'll focus like character by character and maybe not like the whole group, like we split up and do all this different stuff. So you are a little more the star than you are like when we're all in a dungeon or playing or whatever. But you guys are still here waiting for like me to be done with my star time. I'm not going to take it up trying to like peruse the potion section of our general store. You're like, what, like that kind of stuff. So be
Describe
mindful.
picking up the potion and looking at its
Yeah.
ingredients list.
It's like this was on sale last week. Can I still get the like? You don't want like, I don't know. Again, unless for whatever reason that's gonna like grow the story, maybe, or the character.
So
Then
like
go
why
for it.
why even bother running, like why even take table time to use downtime activities? Bill, I'd love to get your opinion on this. Like why use downtime in D&D at all? What's the point?
Well, um, because not everything that matters is an encounter, and so like when you're thinking about uh like downtime, you're thinking about something that like I'm not going to run into an encounter. If you get attacked while you're in your downtime, the player's gonna be like, "What the fuck?" Like
Yeah.
like no, I'm just going shopping. Like I'm not getting attacked. Like or it's a really big deal. It doesn't like it's a really big a part of the story. It's not just like a routine like
Mm-hmm.
um event, but I think there are a lot of things that you do that are to assist in the story, like Eric talks about, like that are that help with the general story and also help your character to like overcome the next obstacle that they have, like like the prep time, like you like a lot of times when you're thinking of like an adventure, or like if you've played some of like the SWAT teams games on. I know I'm going somewhere with this. It seems weird. Um, but like the mission prep and planning is longer than the actual mission.
Right.
Because like if you want to, like think of like a bank heist. Like if you played Grand Theft Auto 5, like
Yeah.
the bank heist was one mission. Prepping for that bank heist was 8 or 9 missions. Like, but that's how it is. Like the actual event can be, in like the grand scheme of things, a smaller event than all the things you need to do.
And that's a lot of fun, like that planning part.
Yeah.
We've all listened to podcasts, I'm sure, where it's like they spent an hour and a half just planning what they're going to do. It all goes to shit. It always does.
Yeah.
But no dice was rolled, and like that's if you have a whole session and nobody rolls any dice, that is still a good session, because you're sometimes like nothing was in chance. This is all planned out. Like there was no risks or anything that couldn't happen. It was I think it's a very good way to build your like the emphasis on storytelling, because you're not like you're not worried about success or failure. You're not worried about like optimization. You are just doing what your character wants to do, and what he would do, and role playing out how he would do it. So it's, you put the dice away during downtime, and just tell me like, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it?
Yeah. So first of all, before we get like too deep, there was a UA that they put out with a lot of an Unearthed Arcana with a bunch of different downtime activities. Because I think the original ones, there were like 5. And they're not anything that, like, they're just really dumb.
Yeah. And we'll include the link to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So even just sticking to like rules as written, I don't know how many there are, but there's a whole bunch of different like downtime things you can do. And some of them are really interesting. I mean, one of them is just crime. You could do crime.
Do crimes.
Like, all right, guys, we'll meet back up here in like 4 days. We'll go fight that dragon. I'm going to go rob some folks. I'm going to go pickpocket. I'm going to go do some B&E. I'll catch you later. But there's stuff that like, I don't know. Again, I like, if that's what like the character would do, and you can have like a fun like little side story and like a reason to show that. I think it can be really interesting.
Well, let's do like a quick thought experiment. Like, you want to go your road, you're gonna go do crimes. Maybe you're tied to the local thieves guild, and doing crimes elevates in this downtime, like elevates your status in the guild.
Yeah,
like,
or you have somebody who you are required to do things, and you have like you are indebted to somebody that like the thieves guild or something, like, and you're like, no, I have to go do this. Like, and you don't want to tell everybody, so it's not doing it with the group. I got an errand to do, and you got to go run the errand. Like, here, this is the last time. We're even now.
Yeah.
We're even when I say we're even. Like,
close out that deck, get a cool magic item. Next quest. Like,
the difference, I think, would be like if we all had to commit crime, that's a play session. Like, if we have to break into this museum to get a gem, like that's a play session. But if it's one person doing it, you do a little like downtime side mission. But they've released a whole bunch of them that you can, and obviously you don't have to stick to these, but they open up a lot of interesting avenues that before I started like researching this article, didn't know that the UA came out with all of these different things. So before that, like, really, like, we don't really use downtime that much, like in our games. We do the aforementioned like transactional, like, we sold all the stuff we didn't need. I bought this, that kind of stuff. And then I kicked back and hung out, waited for the next job, like, which is fine. You can do that. But if you want to have, I think it's really important. And I think we're doing a good job now of like building like character backstories out a little more, fleshing the world out a little more, maybe some little character arcs in there, and using downtime to do that, because you're not always going to be able to do that in like play session, in like campaign.
Yeah, and it was really fun to actually do our first interlude where we had a chance to kind of just push our own character stories a little bit further. And it was fun to sit back and listen to the other characters, their stories play out when you weren't, when it wasn't your turn. And I think Billy, you kept it to a nice manageable chunk where each person got, like 10 or 15 minutes of spotlight before moving on.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of brings me to like the next question I have for you guys is how to like run downtime activities, when we're in between sessions, when we're in session, in kind of like we need to transition from, nighttime, because you can do not downtime activities during those long rests. There's a lot of
Yeah.
opportunities to use them. So I'm curious about your thoughts on how to sort of run those efficiently and effectively.
I could go first if Bill doesn't want to.
Yeah, I mean, like it's your article, so I'm bouncing off of you.
You're the DM. But yeah, I think Billy did a really good job. Like if your standard session is an hour long and you've got 3 characters, like divide it in 4, because you've got a little bit before and a little after some bookends, and then you have 3 evenly spaced time for everybody. So the characters also have to again realize you're the star, but you're not the star. So like, don't stretch out your time and make everybody wait. And so you have to have a little bit of play on both sides. And that's tough. Like it's tough to kind of script out like this is going to be 15 minutes of playtime. We've all seen 15 minutes turn into 45. But yeah, I think like, again, like ask yourself over and over, why are we using table time for this? Like my 15 minutes, why am I taking 15 minutes for this? What do we want to accomplish? And that will drive what you're doing. And again, Bill did a great job with our interludes of like, we all had 3 completely different things we did. Because our 3 characters run completely, before we met, completely different lives. So why would they be the same? So you really, as a DM, have to know the characters. You have to like read the backstories, pay attention. As a player, you have to build interesting stuff for the DM to chew on and use.
Yeah, and I think all of us really took Mark's article about knife theory to heart, to provide, and using World Ambo really helped to provide some just like people, places, things that Billy was able to use and pull into the interlude, and each one focused on a very specific thing. And yeah, like I think that was a great way to do it.
Yeah.
And at the end, bookend it with like a group scene.
Yeah.
Which was also really great.
Yeah, it is like I'm as the DM, like you're running the story, you're telling people where they go. Generally, like you're directing them. But with downtime, it is 100% like the players should have the ultimate choice of what they're doing in their downtime. Like you shouldn't really be directing them unless like something happens, an event happens, and then is that event a downtime, or is that an event that needs to have its own session? Like,
yeah.
So like I think if you're going to have extended downtime, get with your players and talk to them about, okay, we're going to have some downtime here. Think about what you're going to do. Tell me what you're going to do. Get some planning, so you're not just like, all right, you guys have some downtime. Like I purposefully for this last
interlude,
or no, the last session that we're playing where you guys have a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
I did not purposely did not tell you that you're gonna have a lot of downtime, because I wanted it to be like a shock where you didn't know what you're doing and you walk in all of a sudden like, oh, now we're just sitting here for 7 days. Like,
yeah,
I wanted that to be like, okay, now what do you guys do? You didn't come prepared to just be bored out of your minds. You didn't come prepared to like do something. Like now it's realizing on you, like, what do you do? And so I thought that would be kind of fun, where it's like surprise downtime when you're expecting like an action packed like romp, and then it's just it's not, which is a lot of time what happens. Like we're gonna go do this. It's gonna be amazing. You get there, you're like, drum, like So,
and that's like in the last session that we had, realizing this and also anticipating this article from Eric, it kind of got me thinking, well, I need to start doing stuff in this downtime and like take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So there's another magic user. Can we trade some spells and like learn from each other? Like that's a good use of downtime to like advance your character in a meaningful way. There's so many options on how to do that. You can craft potions, you can craft arrowheads, there's learn new skills.
Yeah, there and again there's like the UA thing on downtime, and I found another one that like just kind of breaks it up in an easier way to read because the UA is like 12 pages long or longer, 14 pages. But yeah, that's so like you can do downtime like we're on a carriage ride to the next town. It's going to take 4 hours. We're not going to necessarily play that time out. What do you do during this carriage ride? Like, do you gamble? Do you work on lockpicking? Do you like, there's stuff like that that you can easily just kind of throw in. And you can play a little scene in there. Like, yeah, we chat about this and I learned something new about somebody's backstory. But in the rest of the time, you know, I'm reading, I'm relaxing, I'm doing like, and it's weird because I feel like a lot of times we just don't think about that thought. It's like we teleport, fast travel. Oh, I did nothing. I sat there like glazed over, you know, until we get to the village and I can talk to the innkeeper. So there's just a lot of like interesting stuff to think about, like rounding out the world and your character. I mean, even like one of them is like build a stronghold. Like,
yeah,
that's something that's going to take a long time.
A lot of downtime.
But you chip away at it over all those adventures.
I mean, even like crafting magic items is like going to take a long time. We played a Adventurers League where a guy wanted to build a set of plate armor. So like every downtime, he would make sure to tell the DM, I'm going to spend this much gold and this much time working on my plate armor. Because like at the end of the campaign, he wanted to be able to have it, but he did the math and knew like it's going to take a long time and a lot of gold. So like there's like interesting stuff you can do with it that's not necessarily, it's like in the middle of like transactional and like acting the scenes out. Because again, like I don't need to act out forging plate armor unless there's a reason to, unless like you know the forge masters, his grandmaster's rival, you know, like there's interesting stuff you can do with it, but you don't necessarily have to.
There is a huge like in between just mentioning what you're doing and full play acting it. Like you can describe what you're doing in like 30 seconds, and that is, and you know, you don't have to say, oh, he's making plate armor. That took 2 seconds, boring. But you could say like, oh, you haven't seen him much in this last 3 weeks, you know, and when you do see him, he comes back and he's sweaty and covered in, you know, covered in black soot from working at the forge. Like that, there you go. You're giving it character, you're giving it life. And that took 15 seconds of actual game time, but like, it feels like he's doing it. Like you understand. So it is that balance as the GM where you have to, like, you don't want to slog the party down, but you want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to feel like their things matter, not just like you're not hand waving something that they think is important. So like, like we talked about a little bit in my my DM tips where like you like check in with everybody. So like when there's downtime, like you identify that there's downtime, like have the players know that like I'm not expecting you to do anything, but now is your chance that if you want to do something, let me know. And so like, is there downtime? Like, all right, you got about 4 hours. You guys doing anything? And people are like, I'm just going to read a book. And then you can just, okay, like you just get by what the players want. That okay, I'm fast forwarding this. Like nobody really cares. Like keeping it more forward. Like, but if somebody is want to do something, like let them know if they're going to play out, and just give the other characters. Like you have to remember, and sometimes I don't, that like if one character is doing a scene, like everybody else is usually not standing around. Like you kind of, okay, I want to get through the scene so I can keep going it, but give everybody else a chance to do it. So you're not skipping out on multiple scenes because like, while Eric is forging his armor, somebody else is doing something else, you know, everybody's got to be doing something. So like, you know, after, okay, he checked with his armor. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And some people are just like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just kind of hanging out. Like, cool. That's fine. That's no harm for your character, but you know, you're not obligated to come up with like this really intricate activity. You don't have to do.
You don't have to. Yeah, I mean, relaxation is literally one of the things you can do.
Yeah, relax.
Right below pit fighting, which feels totally different.
Well, so Bill, like you brought something up where it's like the DM, it's on the DM to kind of present opportunities to downtime. Then it's much onus on the players to figure out what they want to do in their downtime and just doing those check-ins. And there was a point in our last session where we were starting some downtime like my opportunity kind of passed, and just like I brought it up later. Hey, there was a scene I wanted to play out. Can we do it? It was just all it took is just voicing what I needed.
Yeah,
because Billy was, making his decision of, all right, they're not interested in this. Let's just jump forward. So it's like even
I don't
if
wanna,
those, go ahead.
I was just saying, I don't like. I'm trying to move the story forward. So like, if I feel like there's a lull, I'm going to come in, and I didn't like. And if it's like, oh, it wasn't a lull, it was a purposeful like. This wasn't a lull. This was I was setting up something like just interrupt like, hey, before we go off, like it's like okay, in those you wait rest for 4 hours. Like wait a second, I wanted to do something there. Like just interrupt it. No DM's gonna be like too late.
Yeah,
right.
Too late.
And it's just like we've been playing together long enough where I feel comfortable too. Like, hey, Bill, I wanted to get the scene. Can I do it real quick? Where like if you're maybe new table, new players, just don't feel like you can't advocate for yourself. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I forget everybody forgets something and you overlook something. It happens all the time, especially when you have a table with multiple people with multiple things going on. It's very easy, and it's no like you never mean offense to it. You just like purposely for leaving somebody else out. It's just it happens.
Give each other a lot of grace.
Yeah. So I feel like one thing that would help like a DM and the players like kind of get in the right headspaces. Like instead of ask like, are you guys doing anything? Like, do you have any downtime activities, like specifically? Because a lot of times, like, are you doing anything? I'm like, well, no, am I? I don't think so. Like, just sitting here. But like, specifically, are there any downtime activities you guys want to do? Like, oh, yes, I did. I wrote on my character sheet that this guy wanted to, do whatever. Because like we've all got so many things going on, and sometimes it's hard to switch gears from like role playing and fighting to like, what do I want to do outside of that?
Yeah. It's like the question people ask you, what do you do outside of work?
Like, do you have any hobbies you do? Or, so like if you specify, like if you dial that in a little more, they'll be like, oh yeah, I like doing this. Whatever it is.
Character sheet's a great place to put that so you have a reminder, like you said.
Exactly. Yeah. I would on like character creation, I think it's a fun, like, what your character's goals are. If you've listened to our episodes on like character creation or background or whatever, like, where they came from, where they want to go, more than likely there's a downtime activity, or you could make one that aligns with those things.
Yeah.
Either like the past or the future. Like, do they slink back into gambling and pit fighting, or are they trying to become a better person and want to craft an item, or whatever it is? Are they training every minute they get to be a better whatever? There's some really interesting ones on here that like you should use them. They're tools at your disposal that I know I forget all the time to use.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great
to make your character better.
It's a great tool for the DMs to present some fun role-playing opportunities and growth opportunities for the player outside of encounters in the campaign. And then for the players, it's a great way to control and have some agency over what, how your character develops. And that's like one of your opportunities to drive that forward. I want to move on to what are some ways we can make downtime interesting I think we've covered some ways, but like, are there any like tactics or things that we can do as like DMs and players to just like make sure that these downtime opportunities are engaging and are worth the table time?
Well, a lot of them come with rolls and checks you have to make. So like the crime one, like you have to pass dexterity, and they'll lay this out in the UA for downtime. So it has some stakes a little bit, and especially for that one, or even gambling or pit fighting.
I think it should, like, crime and pit fighting should have.
Yeah, you could be arrested. What are you going to do if you're arrested and you have to go? The team needs to go to mission and you're arrested.
That's
so
a fun
you just
twist.
derailed the whole thing because you wanted to purse snatch and you got caught, and now we're geared up and ready to go into the dungeon, and we're like, where the hell is Bill? Like, and we got to find you. So then that like there's a ton of stuff. And do a whole breakout mission. There's a ton of like stuff that So I think that's a little different than what you asked, because that's like, can this downtime have consequences?
I think. Well, I said more.
100%.
I said more interesting, and I think consequences make things
Consequences
inherently
are
more
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
So adding a chance of consequence, I think, is a fantastic way to make things interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every downtime activity should have like it should do something. So it could either
Yeah.
add consequence. There's a chance of adding consequences, increases the understanding of your character, or just character development, or use those hooks, those
Yeah.
those knives, those story things that like something that it complicates the situation more for that one character, and maybe not the campaign, but just that
Mhm.
character. Like, so it should always have at the end of the downtime, it should be different than when it was the beginning. It should have
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
Should
a great.
affect.
Yeah, it's a
it
great
should
piece of
affect it.
advice.
If it's not going to affect it, except for like that I have these things now, or I went off and I did this really fun thing, like, and I had fun, like
Yeah.
did that change you, or you just like, I needed to relax, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
like did that change you as a person? Like, how did that relax? Like, even if you go to the beach to relax, like, okay, you're get a chance to like unwind and think about all the things you did. Like, are you questioning some of the decisions you made? You make, and that's like as a DM that where you
Mhm.
got to push those questions. Like, if somebody says something and they're just like, I don't really know what I do, or I'm just going to do this because I think my character would do this. Like,
Yeah.
figure out a way that like to make that downtime interesting by asking them those tough questions, or throwing an encounter with
Mhm.
somebody in there. Like, just, oh, while you're he doesn't know what he's going to want to do for a downtime. Like, oh, well, you get back to something and you have a letter waiting for you, and it's from an old friend. Like, and
Yeah.
you just say, like, what did that old friend say, or how did you know this guy? Like, make them
Yeah.
so many
No,
opportunities.
I think that's a great. I mean, it goes right up there with like my like. Why are you doing this? Like, you are doing this. If you choose to do it, it should affect something, the character, the story, in a negative or positive way. You gain something, like it to make it. It's got to be interesting to use stable time.
Yeah. Well, and that's like we can do a quick reflection on the interlude that Bill ran and apply this filter to it.
Mhm.
Umrin had a thing where he was able to find a lead on information on his like secret religion.
Yeah.
Wizard Claws had learned that perhaps the dean of transmutation school of magic is not what he seems. Zeisel found a secret cabal of lower like rogues, thieves guild type kind of,
Yeah.
shadow organization that's looking out for him. So
Yeah.
like,
So it set all of us on a path that is our own path and not the group's path necessarily.
yeah, and
Now
no,
we
not
may
showering
get
like
pulled
magic.
into them.
Exactly, and that's we're excited to. But
Yes, exactly.
each one of those characters is left changed without having to like give out gold or magic
Mhm.
items or change anything about the game at all.
Yeah.
Just by the interactions with these NPCs and those relationships. Like I think that was a great example of interlude. The table time was worth it.
Mhm.
The characters were changed.
Yep.
And there's somewhere like I think the next thing is like there's a next. It leads to something next.
Yeah. So exactly. So then our next downtime or interludes, like we kind of have a guide, and like we could like, oh no, I wanna actually spend this time pit fighting, or like fine, but this other hook is still out there, and like either you go for it or it might come for you. So it's just and I think that was a really well done interlude downtime, because Bill asked me like what would Zeisel do. I'm like, probably like continue, like he would go back to work, he would do stand up, and like go back to like his like haunts where he hangs out, like stuff like, because he's not a crafter, he's not like so
Yeah.
Crafter
and
of
then
jokes.
he's crafter of jokes, but like he's not making a armor. So then Bill created this whole other thing around it like that, and pulled stuff from my backstory that was and propelled me into like another like little adventure, and it was just like perfect, because I didn't give him much, to be honest. I don't know, he would go work, like, because Zeisel doesn't have like a huge like forward motivator other than like making money to live.
He's very pragmatic, yeah.
Yeah. So
Is the anti-backwards motivator. He does not want to go back. He doesn't
exactly.
care.
Yes.
He doesn't really care what direction forward is, as long as it's not back.
And hopefully I will find that forward motivator for him. And that's like kind of part of his character. And I left it unchecked. I don't know what it's going to be.
And that part's really cool
because
because
you figure that stuff out.
Yeah, and like being able to discover that, like when you don't have it as the player kind of creating the character, it's fun to give yourself the room to discover as you play, because that's an opportunity, or it's a different style of character creation, but one that's just as valid and I think just as fulfilling to explore.
Have you guys looked at, I'm going to blink it in here in our little chat. This is like the easily consumable downtime thing.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
It's 2 pages instead of 14.
Yes.
This is good.
I still have to go back to the UA one every once in a while because it's got all the tables and whatnot on it. But there's some on here that I'd never really thought about that are really, I think, interesting. And one of them is carousing.
That's interesting.
So this is like, this might be my favorite one I read on here because I was like, what? I never thought of this. This is so cool. You get an in with like a group, like whoever, like if you've got a target, like, hey, I want to make friends with this person. You can spend like a week at, like, oh, they go to this bar, so I'll go to this bar every night. I've got to spend 10 gold to do it, for the week.
Buying rounds,
chatting them up. And then by the end of the week, you make a charisma persuasion check or whatever. Maybe they like you a little more.
Maybe that gives you an advantage on a check.
Exactly.
Later.
So in the article I wrote, I had like a little scenario about that. Like, if you need to get into this castle and your first obstacle is like the guards, maybe you become friends with them. So then if you need to do any persuasion checks, they're like, oh no, that's just Eric. I know him. He's a good guy. Let him go. Whatever. There's just like really interesting stuff that I never really thought about doing in downtime.
That's this PDF that you just shared, and we'll share it in the show notes as well, I think is a great way to make downtime more interesting, because like at the bottom, sowing rumors, that's some of the other.
So yes, that's the other one that I think is like, that's the opposite maybe of carousing. Like stupid. Those are the two that I wanted to talk about specifically that I'm like, these are so fun.
Yeah. DMs beware.
Exactly. Like I want to spend this week spreading rumors that, this person is like a devil worshiper or whatever, so that if they then catch me doing, like there's like all these little things you can do to potentially like, oh no, he's a devil worshiper, so he's obviously lying about me doing this thing that I did. Like, there's just like little things you can set up to like, again, affect your game and not just be, oh, I sold this sword and I wanted to buy a potion and or whatever.
Yeah, I think, and even just if you stuck to this list, you would be, I think, well off on decision or different things meaningful things that you could do, to shape your game. And then again, like I think the rules that we've established, like first establish if it's worth table time. Next, see if it's going to like change or impact or move characters, a game, or story in some way. And then if there's any kind of connectiveness or connective tissue between those things. Or some tie into the overall story. Like that's, I think, a great way to bring these into your game.
Yeah, this is the point where the DM pulls your backstory in. It's really hard for that to happen in the middle of a dungeon of like Draugr, and you're like, oh, and then your childhood rival's here. What do you like? It doesn't make sense. But this is where they pull that stuff from your backstory, or the easier place.
Well, Eric, it was a great article. I think I learned a lot from it, and it definitely inspired me to start pulling this stuff into our game. Any other parting shots before we wrap this episode up?
And don't be afraid to use downtime. Like, not every adventure is going to be back to back to back to back. You're not. This isn't 24. You're not Jack Bauer. And so like there should be downtime. Like it's not like an exception. it should be like the rule is that just expect that your characters are going to have downtime in any written story because it happens. Like if you're in such like a catastrophic threat that you can't, like, the characters don't have a couple days or a couple weeks at some time just to do what they need to do, then you are some serious issues.
Yeah, you're busy dudes. Yeah, I think like don't be afraid to use like the downtime interludes that like we did, but also don't be afraid to just ask your players if there's a lull or if they're traveling or if they're setting up camp for the night. Are there any downtime activities you want to do?
Yeah. And again, I think it's definitely a two-way street where the DM will be able to, present opportunities, and the players also really need to do a good job of taking them and coming prepared, with those. So hopefully this helps you use more of that time to your benefit and really just give those opportunities, because I think some just interesting character development and role play magic can happen during downtime. So don't be afraid to roll it into your games. That's it for this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and head over to +1togaming.com for more live discussions, actual plays, character creation tips, and more. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.